Hello, my name is Logan Crow, and I'm the executive director and founder of the Frida Cinema in downtown Santa Ana. And today, our special guest is Mr. Bill Michelle of Left of the Dial Records. Join me in welcoming Bill.
Good
Hello,
evening.
how are you?
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being on. Nice T-shirt.
I bought this the first day I visited Left of the Dial Records.
Is that right? You,
I did. Yes, this is the one. I don't think I bought a record that day. I just left telling Jeff I'd be back,
yeah.
maybe by the store.
So it's a vintage.
It is a special. It will eventually get framed.
Excellent. Okay, as well it should. As well it should. So, Left of the Dial Records, for those of you who are unfamiliar, there are friends and neighbors right here in downtown Santa Ana where the Frida Cinema is located. They are our local indie record shop and a great place for vinyl and other things. Bill will talk a little bit about more what they have to offer. They are located at 320 French Street, Suite B. If you are familiar with downtown Santa Ana, we are right on 4th Street in downtown Santa Ana. They are essentially right up to French, which is the next street east of us. You just kind of walk up there and then make a right, and they are right there on the corner. So hop, skip, and a jump away. Fantastic place, very cool indie vibe. And the reason I wanted to have you on, Bill, is because we'll talk a little bit about, obviously, the transitions that we're facing right now as independent shop owners. But we've been streaming films. We'll talk about that in a moment. And one of the documentaries we're streaming is Other Music, a new documentary. We'll show you the trailer in a moment, folks. And before I'd even seen it, as I was reading about it, I thought this would be a great opportunity to have you on. Talk to you about how you're doing, talk to you about your store, but also talk about the documentary.
Yes. You know, what's interesting is there are three of them out right now. One is about the guy that's collecting 30,000 records for Coachella. I forget what that's even called. The other one is Vinyl Nation.
Okay.
And that was told from the standpoint of emotional collectors. And I didn't really get that much out of that one. I love this one because I could really relate to the vibe of Tower across the street and all that.
Yeah.
And I could really relate to the two owners and what they were going through. And yeah, so this one was much more in my wheelhouse. I watched it a couple times, actually.
Sure, and it was interesting too that last week we talked to our neighbor Sarah Rafael Garcia, who owns Libromobile, because we also are streaming a film about independent book collectors and old New York City bookstores called The Booksellers. And it was interesting to see commonality between the two documentaries. Obviously, Other Music had more of an indie vibe, more punk rock, but the connections, I think, between what you do, what I do with the Frida as sort of a specialty shop for film, basically, as opposed, we are to AMC as you are to, gosh, what's left? I was going to say Tower.
That's funny. Everyone uses that term. Indie should just go away. We're all just small record shops.
I was going to say Tower Records, but they're gone. Yeah, right. Yeah. Wow.
All of the name ones are gone. The Licorice Pizzas, the Music Pluses, they're all gone. But the difference in my world is that I'm also doing gear and repairs. Right. Most stores don't do that. And the other sad thing is that so many stores are just 95% reissues these days. Real collectors want to find the great used copy.
Right.
And that's the other thing that sets a small shop like mine apart. So many of the others that you'll see, they are 90 and 95% reissues, and people don't want that. They could shop online to get those.
Exactly. Well, let's watch the trailer, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about that, talk about the film, and I do want to talk about, I think you hit the nail on the head, what differentiates, even when those big stores were open, what differentiated a Left of the Dial from a Sam Goody or a Tower Records? So here's the trailer, folks. And again, this film is streaming off thefridacinema.org. You can watch it right off our website. Just go to thefridacinema.org and look up on the homepage. You'll see tabs for different movies. It is Other Music. Here you go.
In the late 90s, early 2000s, I don't think that people really have an idea of how many records were sold out of this store.
Other music at the time was one of the main sources for hearing about music first.
It was a place that I loved to go whenever I wanted to find something new or something I didn't know about.
Holy, this one is amazing.
Other music championed a lot of these bands really early on.
The first time we got a card in Other Music, we're like, my band's a real thing now.
The first couple of years, it was like nowhere I'd ever worked before. It was crazy. Just from the amount of personalities you had to interact with on the staff, and then the amount of people that were coming in the store.
Look at the line.
If I'm completely honest, I was never just chilling there. I always got that like first day of school feeling like, okay, just, don't fuck up.
There shouldn't have been an intimidation factor. But there was. I mean, I'm not the first person to say that, right?
It wasn't just a record store, it was definitely like a community center in a lot of ways.
It's one of those things where it transcends a job. These people become your family.
The plan is to close Other Music on June 25th.
It's sad. It's like a home for a lot of people.
Music, it's a way to connect with other people. It's a way to connect with yourself and just kind of live for a purer type of joy than we get in our daily grind.
All right, and we're back. So, fantastic film, fantastic window to a place that not too unfamiliar to all of us. It's obviously record shops like this still exist, but it was interesting that this film in particular, 10 minutes into it, they lead with the fact that they're going to close, and so they tell the story of the impact of this store and what it had on the staff, on the I should say their fans and their regulars,
the community,
and also on musicians and artists. They tell it from the frame of it being on the way out, and they tell the story that way. And so you've got this pervasive sense of the loss of it as you're watching the film, which I thought was very impactful. Can you tell me a little about, you mentioned when we first talked about it that you were more than familiar with this store.
So what really was really interesting to me, when you see the store, they were a large portion CDs. And in the movie, they mentioned that the band, The National, was actually selling their homemade CDRs there at the store. So they were a huge boost to local bands. And I love that. And I, in fact, whenever I can, I take in people's local records and I don't take any cut of that. Anytime they sell, I have their contact information, they get the money. I do it just to show up, to have a place to get their music other than at their shows, which aren't around right now. And even occasionally I'll have the bands play in store and get a chance to have a stage. And I don't know if people caught that, but they didn't charge for shows there. I have only charged a couple times, and that once was because Tommy Stinson from The Replacements insisted that we charge $25 a head, and he forced his way in to pack 50 people into my little shop, which was wonderful. But other than that, I've done nothing but free shows. Punk bands, jazz bands, what have you, but almost always local bands. So anyway, the interesting thing about their situation, CDs were a huge part of their business. And they mentioned that the jumping off point was in fact 9/11, which of course was 2001. After that, things went downhill, and big box stores like Circuit City and Best Buy were selling new CDs for like $10 or less. Well, they were selling CDs for, I would guess, 16, 18, $20 and getting them for 10. Suddenly you can't compete. You're paying what other people are selling them for. So yeah, that was the beginning of the end for them. It's really quite amazing that they lasted all the way to 2016.
Yeah, and they were, I think it was 21 years, the film.
Yeah, 95, yeah.
Which, you know, it's interesting that, by the way, folks, I'll be checking the live chat. So by all means, if you have questions for Bill or myself or anything you want to comment on, we'll read you. So far, we have Enrique Alonso who says, hello, Bill. So hello from
Yes, my man.
Right on. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought because the chat popped up. But
we were talking about 21 years.
21 years. I remember thinking, and it's interesting because right now, obviously, like a lot of independent stores, we are on pause, which is to say our doors are closed, but we are still very actively streaming films, doing things like this, you know, reaching out to the community, talking cinema. We adapted. We're trying to think on our feet and being innovative. But there was a moment I remember where maybe in our third year, we were struggling pretty hard. And I remember talking to a couple friends and saying, you know, at some point, what is the line where you can't say this was a failed experiment so much as all things end and this is just the end? And I think that, you know, as I was watching this documentary, I kept thinking at 21 years, this was a success story. I mean, they had every cause. I mean, as they're telling the story, and it's just a bunch of friends who get together, they're working at a video store. They decide to launch a record store. They are able to make it through the challenge of being across the street, literally. Was it from a Tower Records?
It was. But what gets lost in some of this, do you know when that tower's closed?
I do not.
2006. So they had 10 years without it.
Right.
I have to tell you, I'm going to guess it was, in the end, good to have a tower across the way because of that traffic and that vibe that was them being so close to each other.
And they mentioned that. They mentioned that they were other music. I mean, they branded themselves as this is the alternative to
Did you notice the font?
What's that? No, you know what? I noticed it, but it is
this font. And I don't know if Jeff did that on purpose. The font is called Rugby. And if you notice on their door, it is this font.
Oh, right on.
It's so weird. I need to ask Jeff about that. Jeff would be the one who started Left of the Dial back in like 2010.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated that there was 10 years then without Tower across the way.
Yeah.
They said that they would refer people to Tower, but many of their customers they didn't like the Tower experience.
Sure.
That's why they came to them. They weren't going to go over there to find. They would rather come and try to find it another way as opposed to going over there. And I have some of customers that are like that don't, you know, want to reduce the amount of online buying or some of the other stores that carry so much new inventory. They'd rather, you know, deal with me and have me bring it in, maybe pay a little bit more, wait a little bit longer, but then get a chance to come in, get it from me, and see what's new in my shop.
Absolutely.
So,
and I'm glad
that's all part of the process.
I'm glad you mentioned Jeff, and I was going to bring him up, and actually Blake Means is on the chat. He says, I don't think I know the story of Bill buying Left of the Dial. I'd love to hear more. I went to grad school just down the street from both Other Music and Tower, spent a lot of time at Tower. Jeff, I remember way back in the Seal Beach days, when he was in a Seal Beach strip mall, opened Left of the Dial Records and brought it to
November 2010.
There you go, and brought it to downtown Santa Ana. And when he left the store and you bought it, I was so glad that it didn't just go, that someone took it over, kept it independent, kept it a record store, kept it Left of the Dial. Do you want to talk a little bit about that time and sort of that transition and what inspired you to take Left of the Dial on and keep it going?
Sure, and it's so funny because people perhaps looked at me like I was circling around Orange County looking for a shop, and that was absolutely untrue. The day I met, so it was May of 2017, it was the Memorial Day weekend had just happened. We had had people over in my backyard, we had fixed dinner, and someone had said, Bill, you should look into getting a record store. You should run a record store. And my wife's like, oh, don't tell him that, he'll do it. Well, I hadn't really thought of it, but Anyway, long story short, I worked in special ed as a instructional aide in Aliso Viejo Middle School down in South Orange County for 7 years. I got out before anyone did. My boys were still in school. Debbie was, still at her job. And in fact, I said, I'm going to go record shopping. I'm going to go to a place I'd never been. I'm like, oh, here's a place. Left of the Dial Records. I'd never been there. And that was the day I bought this shirt. And to be honest, Jeff was a little down, and he confided in me that he'd been trying to sell the shop. And I said, tell me what you can, give me whatever information. And 3 days later, I had the keys, and 6 days later, he said bye-bye. So, I mean, it all happened very quickly, and I evolved it into more gear-centric than it was, because that's my strength. I don't have, a huge multi-thousand piece record collection. I have 200 or 300 that I've known and loved since I was a kid. Most of my stuff is 70s and 80s, like when I was in high school and just after. But I hadn't really been actively involved in the record community. But I'd stayed very involved with gear and stuff. It's always been my love.
Right, and I know that Jeff and I had what we had in common was he was a big shoegaze guy, and that's
yeah.
So I remember I used to go in there, both stores, and there was a lot of shoegaze records and shoegaze iconography, and I love that obviously you both brought your specific passions in terms of music and gear to the store. I have your Instagram pulled up, and I'm just showing folks your Instagram. It's available at leftofthedialrecords. Instagram.com/leftofthedialrecords, and your Facebook tag is the same. So as you can see here, you've got your a lot of gear. It's a very active page, and I love following it. Whenever you do a special, whenever you have new vinyl in, whenever you have new gear in, this is basically where you communicate from. This is a question I often have for independent shop owners, and the answer always seems to be the same. Do you run your own Instagram?
Absolutely. And to be honest, it was not a strength initially. It was not something I spent a lot of time on. I didn't have an Instagram account. I wasn't a big Facebook guy. And between my wife and some other assistants, I got involved in it and really started to enjoy it. And I could see that people were interacting with me, which was, of course, the goal, to get behind what I was trying to do, to ask questions, to be interested in what I was posting, and so on. And I've come to really appreciate it. And what's fun now is I have people placing orders from, Kansas, Texas, New Jersey, the Philippines. I didn't realize how powerful it really was. I love my little town of Santa Ana and selling to the good people of Santa Ana, but let's be honest, every once in a while you get a $200 Charles Mingus record that's sitting in your shop for 3 weeks. You got to tell the rest of the world and let them have a shot at it. And that often is the key to selling things online and getting more visibility for yourself.
Sure. And, you've had this incredible longevity, and you're still obviously there. And even in the face of COVID-19, I see you actively promoting, Can you talk about what is maybe the one or two main things that keep the business thriving? Would you say it's gear sales or an online sales in general? What do you think is the main things that keep you going?
You know what the real key is, and I've used this line with a few people now that know me. It was my hope to become the Cheers of record stores, as in, somebody goes, Nom, that's my classic rock guy. I'm like, yeah, look at new arrivals. There's 6 things you might like. But that's when I knew I would say, a dozen people that come in every week.
True.
And it's that recurring, and also I've gotten to where when certain things come in, maybe it's a really rare punk single, I know who's going to respond. So I have to decide, do I go right at them, or do I let someone else respond and have them have a chance not to? So what I've come to know is, when do I contact, so-and-so, because it's a record I think he may like, and make sure he gets the first shot because he's very loyal to me,
Sure.
So, and to be honest with you, I have, I won't embarrass him, but I have one main customer who's in every Friday, and he doesn't just talk with me, let's just say.
Right.
And there's that once people get to appreciate the quality of your product, that the price is right, they don't have to spend a lot of time, you know. I'll occasionally get a guy in here with a light and a magnifying glass looking at my records.
Sure.
I take a lot of pride. If they're not up to snuff, they get in the dollar bin or they get in the trash. So I tell people, if you buy a record from me and you're not happy with it, you bring it back, no questions asked. If it doesn't play as good as I said it was, or you have some issue with it, I take it back, give you the money back. I believe that used records should be fluid like that. And especially when people are so interested in my recommendations, if I give them a recommendation that doesn't float your boat, bring it back. Well, guess what, Logan? People never bring them back. They may never play them either. I don't know, and they're just nice.
Right. But they know. I think they know though that you mean it and that you would take it back. Yeah.
I think that has really served me. Right. But that also is now serving me in return online customers. So I have the same faces, the same names, the same destinations on my shipments. So, you know, with the whole COVID-19 thing, I've been doing more online direct sales stuff, which really is not what I like to do. But, you know, you got to get some cash flowing and what have you. But it's great to see the same people jump in when I post.
Sure.
That says that they are following. You know, I obviously had many followers that Jeff had acquired in the day, but I think I have really honed in on those that are really dedicated to the shop. And so many people that when I post gear stuff, going, gosh, I wish there was a local gear guy that had that kind of stuff. You sure you won't ship and that sort of stuff.
Right.
You know, I've been very fortunate to find a guy who does repair work, and some of it I can do myself. So I troubleshoot people's stuff right on the spot when I have time. That's what's really been fascinating about this since this, 5 weeks or so now. Yeah. It's really a serious thing when people's gear is not working, when they cannot play their records. So I have had to take people's stuff in, work on it overnight, try to get my repair guy involved as needed, or sell them new gear or get their other stuff up and running. I've had a lot of very passionate people, let's say, you know, almost be pushy to get their stuff up and running. But music has always been that for people. It's a comfort. It's like comfort food. People have their comfort and go-to music, like a comfort drink or whatever. It's a big part of, it becomes a bigger part when you have the time to do it. So, you know, I've got 3 or 4 people right now trying to book appointments so that I can look at their gear or sell them new stuff.
Right.
So that, I think, is like one of the most important things that I do during this time is help people. I'm not bringing them toilet paper or something like that, but I am giving them some happiness. And that part feels really good.
And I think, and it's interesting because you mentioned that they're passionate about what they're doing and they're collecting and their gear. You are passionate about what you do. And I think that that is recognized by them. And I think that that's where the trust comes in, is that they know that the quality is going to be there and the service is going to be there because you take this seriously. And it's not just a job for you. And it's interesting that you mentioned Cheers, because Cheers gets brought up a lot at the Frida. And it's funny because we have a lot of youth interns. And a lot of them don't know Cheers. They're just not at the age of it. And I often find myself saying, when I say, you know, exactly what you said, we want to be the Cheers of art house cinemas, I use the line. I said, well, it's this TV show and there's a line where everybody knows your name. You know, I want the Frida to feel like the place where everybody knows your name. And in this documentary, you get that same vibe, that this is this commonality that places like Left of the Dial and the Frida have. Is there's a scene in the documentary, and this happens, I'm sure, at Left of the Dial all the time, and it happens at the Frida, where people are just standing around talking music. They're talking music to the staff. They're talking music to each other. They're talking concerts. They're just talking about this art form that they love. And, you know, I'm sure that does happen at your AMCs, but it's a different type of experience.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, it's more of a neighborhood and a community as opposed to a chance gathering. Like those two people are very unlikely to meet again at AMC, where my customers very often are sharing the space. Oh yeah, haven't I met you? Yeah, Bill told me about you. You know, you play in a band and this, that, and the other. There's this impression that I know a lot more about music than I do. So like, my son is too busy now working on his master's, but he used to come in like in summertime, and people would mention a genre of music or a band that I didn't know. My son would just smile and jump in, and suddenly I'd be out of the picture like I wasn't even there, and they'd be bonding and talking about some new metal band and how the band broke off and this, that, and the other. I know a lot, but I'm not great at the newer music and the kids' music. That's why I hired a young man named Vince who helps me with, punk and hard rock and metal and stuff. And then I have another guy named Miles who knows more obscure music than I do. My roots are in the classic rock type stuff of the 70s and early 80s. So, but if you notice in other music, they were trying to hire actual artists. That guy who kept pushing his art pop consortium or whatever that was, as well as they almost had genre specific people. And I don't know if you've ever spent much time in Amoeba, but they also had that concept. Like they get a phone call and it would say, new wave, line 2, and a certain person would pick up. But see, it's not realistic now for a store like mine to have 6 or 8 experts. We just have to do the best we can and use online tools to figure out what people are looking for and so on. But I think that maybe is a little bit of the undoing. Other music was trying to be kind of like Target, a little bit of everything to everybody. We got a pharmacy, we got a dry cleaners, we can do groceries, we can do home goods, we can do electronics. It is very hard to have that level of diversification. For example, I'm not a great hip hop shop or a great thrash and death metal shop. Sure. People don't realize that there's not a guy on a street corner with his sign up saying, thrash metal records for sale that I drove by. That didn't happen. Right. It's just that they don't come available very often. Same with classic hip hop. You just don't see it. It's not that I don't want it, but it's not that simple to just go out and, I put on my thrash metal hat today and go knocking on doors to find thrash metal records. It's not, and also, it's a Hispanic community. Lots of people ask me for Spanish records. Again, I don't know where to find them. I don't know how to ask for them or to seek them. So it's harder than people realize.
Well, it's also about I think what communities and sort of what a lot of independent businesses like ours, they take on a certain level of an organic nature. The community sort of creates sort of the direction that they go in, and a lot of art houses do well with, for example, highbrow dramas, your Merchant Ivory dramas, and we do not. And we get, and our distributors reach out to us and say, hey, I've got this amazing film. It's a period piece set in Venice, and it's and I'll tell them, hey, this looks amazing. And I would love to be a theater where we've got such a hugely diverse audience that would do well here. Our audiences have made it very clear they like horror. They like they do. They like horror. They like genre films. If it's they like Korean cinema. If it's going to be Spanish language, if it's genre, it'll do very well. So Spanish horror, Spanish science fiction, fantasy. If it's not, if it's an amazing, hilarious comedy that's contemporary from Spain, Mexico, you name it, it's not going to do well. They want the genre, animation, and we've tried, we've dipped our feet in everything because we want to see what do people connect to. And after a while, you just know this is what our community wants to see. And so you excel at that. And, every once in a while you take a risk, but at the end of the day, like you said, you can't please everybody. And if you're mission driven and you want to program for the community that's sort of responding, that's what you do. And so I totally feel you on that. I was going to talk a little bit about, so right now, obviously, are you open 5 days a week? Are you by appointment only, or how are you working right now?
Yeah, so I'm doing a couple of things. Like if things are purchased online overnight, I come in to ship them, and I sort of am soft open, and then I contact people that were trying to reach me or to do curbside pickup kind of thing. But I'm not fully open with the signs out and all that. No, it's, a couple hours here and there, maybe every other day. especially for gear sales, that has worked out terrifically well to fix people's little, because oftentimes on the spot, if I'm the only one in the shop and someone brings in a system that needs to be set up or tested, it doesn't go well when I try to check two people out and play two records for somebody that wants to hear, a new punk record. It's difficult to be a one-man band. But in this environment, it actually is very conducive to complete attention and really showing a piece of equipment. And I have to tell you, if people are making appointments to buy gear, they are buying gear because they want to leave with something that they can play their records on. Either I fix what they have or they can't wait around. They're going to replace it and be up and going. And that is my role,
Sure. And then
is it an essential business? Some would argue not. But just, they sure make it feel like it's essential, and I try to help them, So.
No, absolutely.
It's a tricky thing, though. I've seen some things. It is a tricky thing. You don't want to overstep. You don't want to be feeling uncomfortable because all of a sudden, if two people show up, then you got, So it's tricky, but I think people have handled it quite well, all things considered. And I have to tell you, I'm doing all kinds of online and curbside stuff that is not normally my strength, but it has worked out, because I'm happy to hold something for someone if they see it in one of my flips. That's the idea. But the other part of the idea is they come in and see what else I got, and spend some time with me. And that's I think what I do best is interact with my Cheers clientele, and I miss that, and I know they miss that. A number of people saying they can't wait, and I better be open extra hours, blah blah blah, so that when I can open my doors and bring people in at a regular rate with some level of regular hours, that it won't be everybody running through the door at once. We can't have that.
Right, no doubt. Well, we're going to go to the chats in just a moment, but we are talking about Other Music. Other Music is a new documentary that you can catch streaming at the Frida Cinema. You see our website down there, thefridacinema.org. There's also our text to give phone number. This is how you can make a donation to the Frida. We are a nonprofit 501c3 art house. We're Orange County's only 501c3 art house. You can text the word film to 714-276-6080 or visit our website, thefridacinema.org. And again, on the website is all of our streaming films. I'm with you. I cannot wait to reopen my doors, get people through the door, chat with folks, see folks face to face. In the interim, what we are doing is, aside from shows like this and talking to our neighbors, to keep connected with you, our community, we are streaming films, independent new releases like Other Music, which is a new documentary about Other Music record store in New York City that closed. They had a 21-year amazing run. It's an incredible documentary. I think it's, like I told Bill earlier, it was simultaneously inspiring but also kind of sad. But Bill is keeping that model alive, and I'm glad he is, because again, Left of the Dial is an amazing place. Let me go to the comments. We have Albert, who says, "Hi, Bill and Logan. Music and cinema are both essential businesses." Amen. Absolutely. I understand. We've gotten some feedback about the fact that cinemas had to close, and I remind folks, we closed voluntarily. We were, the Thursday, I think it was, that the governor said theaters needed to close. We had already made the decision to close that previous Saturday. I am obviously firm believer in what the Frida does and offers. I founded it. It was my dream come true. And I fully intend to reopen, but it's not worth, that mission for me is not worth the possibility of making our guests, our youth volunteers, our staff potentially contaminated. So until, at that point, there was still a lot of we don't know how, and I was like, this is starting to spread, and we should close and look at what our other options are. But I appreciate that comment. I do think that we are essential in the way you mean, and hopefully sooner than later we will reopen. But until we do, we're certainly not closed as an organization. Please visit our site. There's a lot we're doing. David Reinwald says, "I love that there are a few more documentaries available at the moment at the Frida." Thank you. This is one of my favorite genres. Blake, seeing that the Frida is playing a classic movie I love or finding the perfect record I forgot exists at left of the dial is one of the greatest joys in my life. That's awesome. And that's a huge, I remember, this is a funny story, way back in the day. I mean, probably not that long ago, really. Gosh, I was 18, so this would have been 1993. Am I doing my math right? No, gosh. No, 1998. Sorry, yeah, 1998. Now I'm not sure that that's right. So 1975, that's when I was born. I was right the first time. Anyway, I was obsessed with the song Goodbye Horses by Hugh Lazarus. That's featured in The Silence of the Lambs. And you can stream it now. Back then, you could only find it on the Married to the Mob soundtrack, another Jonathan Demme film. It wasn't, yeah, because Silence of the Lambs didn't have a soundtrack, it had the score, but the song was on, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I had a tickler at Rasputin's in the Bay Area that if it were to come in, to please give me a call. And they got it, and I got in my Dodge Daytona and drove to the Bay Area to pick up my copy of the Married to the Mob soundtrack and drive all the way back to Torrance, California, where I grew up. Right. Because that is what we did. And so I'm with you, that finding a record that you forgot exists or that you're trying to hunt down, finding out a record, it really is its own, there's nothing like going and picking it up and finding it there as opposed to just going on eBay and trying to find it that way, is there? And
well,
I
you know what?
Yeah.
I have developed a relationship with a number of people on Instagram and so on. And there's a gentleman from Indianapolis, Indiana. And he had been to the store once, but I wasn't working that day. And I told him, if you ever come out here again, please let me know. Well, here he was coming. Well, I follow him back. He posts wonderful things. He's super knowledgeable. He shops every weekend. Logan, I found I was nervous. I was like a schoolboy getting ready for a date. It's like, I really want to it was super important that he has a really great experience. I mean, he follows me, he buys stuff for me, but I wanted it to be more than that. And he was thrilled. And I was relieved that I lived up, because when you start to follow these people are, I don't want to say crazy, but they're passionate and they're extremely knowledgeable. They know what they're looking for. They know what they expect to pay. And if you fall short, it's not up to quality or it's wrongly priced, people know. So once you do them that proper service, then they sort of align with you, and it takes a lot of the pressure off of your business relationship. And then, suddenly it's quite easy to have a visitor like that. But it surprised me how excited I was about it. I felt like a kid, like going on a date or getting ready as an athlete and still play basketball, right? Like getting ready for a big game and feeling sort of the butterflies,
Sure.
Like, oh, I can't wait for him to get here, And I like that. It's important that I like that. I shouldn't be doing it if I don't want to impress people that don't come to the store often,
Right. We got some more comments. We have Enrique Alonso who says he credits your tremendous wife for her role in saving saving the store. So there you go.
As do I.
Adriana can't tell you how much Blake and I miss coming into both your spots after a good brunch. Thank you. Oh. I miss it too. Believe me. Issa says, I was lucky to get some awesome stuff when you were tabling at the 4th Street Market last year. Can't wait to visit you in person when you reopen. And then she lists some of the stuff she got. Thelma Houston, George Benson, Mamas and the Papas, Fleetwood Mac, Monkees, Diana Ross, Pat Benatar, Wings, and more. Most records I've ever bought at once. I needed help carrying the bag. That's amazing. That's awesome. And she continues. The Cars, Roy Orbison, Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles, Stand By Me, Nina Simone, just to name a few of what we have found at left of the dial.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have developed a interesting dynamic with my dollar sales. I do them maybe every 6 to 8 weeks over at the 4th Street Market in that open area by Dos Chinos. Well, what is happening now is people come cruising in there from LA and San Diego with like rolling luggage, and they're throwing 100, 150, 200 of these dollar records in it, just like crazy. And on one hand, I'm excited that they're excited, but then I'm like, I don't want one person buying them all, but you got it. If I say I'm open at 11, there's people waiting there ready to go, and that's fun.
Sure.
Good for them.
Blake Means asks, did either of you think DTSA's art, music, and food scene would explode the way it has in the last few years? I'll speak for myself really quickly. Absolutely. I think it had already exploded by the time we opened. I know that when which is to say, obviously it's grown, but when you open a cultural institution like the Frida Cinema, a nonprofit arts-based institution like that, you have to be in the right kind of community. You have to be in a community that appreciates the arts, that appreciates its own community, where there is fire, where there is passion, where there are artists and arts patrons, and otherwise that sort of a model will fail. If there's no community of love around it, if there isn't a shared passion to lift up the arts and lift up artists, you're in the wrong community. And so I would have never, ever, ever even considered bringing an art house into any community that didn't have that going for it already, especially at a time when in a lot of ways we were being, to their credit, and it, was not, we had a couple of board members at the time who were like, this right now with streaming the way it is, and with, multiplexes exploding and people watching at home, and now everything's digital and that's going to be very expensive. This may not be, I don't think art houses will survive. And I was gung-ho that it would, and that downtown Santa Ana would be the kind of community where it could. And, 6 years later, barring COVID-19, obviously, here we are. So I love what has grown out of the community. I love that there are more street festivals. I hope, obviously, we're all able to get to that. But it's been great to see it come together, see more places sort of open their doors creatively to music. Bill, what are your thoughts on that?
I have to be honest, I grew up in Placentia, and I had not spent a lot of time in Santa Ana. In my high school days, so the late 70s, early 80s, Santa Ana was a tough place. It had a number of issues, and it just was not a place that was on my radar. My family, when there was a holiday, we went to the Orange Circle and did those sort of food outings or whatever they had down there. That was where we hung out. But like I say, I had never been to Left of the Dial. And I have to tell you, they have embraced me like I'm the Pied Piper. And I'm not saying I'm a great guy or a bad guy. I'm just saying I had no idea. Like, for example, if there's activity after hours, after I'm gone, I have people letting me know that there were people here and I ran them off, because they don't belong there hanging out by your shop or what have you. It is a wonderful community, and it is hard. I felt like we were going downhill and really making some progress, and now to be slamming the brakes on, it's really heartbreaking. And to be honest with you, I've actually done a big remodel in my shop. I've befriended a guy who's super handy, and I've totally remodeled how my gear is displayed. I've got all my bins on wheels so I can slide them out of the way, so I can have bands in the shop much easier, but I can't do it. And I can't show them off, and it's killing me. Right. So I'm a very positive guy, but I have to tell you, this has been difficult because I want people standing in line to come in and see how exciting it is and all the neat things I've done. But that time will come and it will be wonderful. And I feel like people are more than ready to get back out there, but we'll do it wisely and it'll all work out. So yeah, I love our little town. I think there's more changes coming. One of our big neighbors, I don't know if you saw that, it's got the big clearance sign up. So there'll be more changes coming in our neighborhood, and you and I will be there.
Yeah, we'll fight hard to be there, and it's, there's a line in the documentary where someone says, and right now when you were talking about how you were embraced, when they opened, I don't know if they knew how much people wanted it and needed it, but they did. And that actually is my answer to Adriana asked, do you both have a memorable moment where you either played a specific movie to a crowd or sold an album to a customer? I'll get to you in a moment. For me, my immediate gut reaction to that question was that line, in the sense of pretty much every time somebody comes up and thanks us for playing a movie. I feel that, because for me, it's, I love films. Trevor, who programs with me and is the main programmer, we program from within, from movies that we want to share, and series and filmmakers, and also from without, from feedback from the community and from folks who let us know what they want to see more of. It always means a lot when people acknowledge how grateful they are to have been able to see a film on the big screen, whether that's for the first time, they've never seen it before and it's their first opportunity, or they've seen it a million times but never on the big screen with an audience. But I feel like I should give you one. Let me think about one specific. Bill, do you have a memorable moment where you either sold a record to someone or introduced them to a band and that stuck with you?
Yeah. There was a line in Other Music that I definitely want to talk about that kind of ties this all in for me. The shorter guy, Josh. Chris was the tall guy with the beard. Josh was the other guy. He made a statement. He said, "It's a tough living, but a very satisfying life." He told the story many times. They'd bring money in. They'd have weekends where they'd have 4 registers going and lines, and they put the money to pay employees, to buy new music, because they had all these genre-specific people telling them to buy these records, and they wanted to have neat new stuff, new other music for people to come in and see next weekend. But oftentimes there wasn't much left to pay Josh and Chris and their families. So they were putting everything into the business, and that's the way I run the business. It's unfortunate that it doesn't need to be this huge profit maker. There's a desire to get more records, bring in fresh new gear, but there is nothing like selling someone their first reel system and having them send you that Instagram picture showing the record that you recommended that they're playing. That's the joy for me. Or when I play records, somebody was in the other day and he started talking about Hendrix, and I said, the young guy, probably in his 20s, I go, "Do you know Robin Trower?" No. I put on Bridge of Sighs, which is considered a great hard rock record. Robin Trower is a Hendrix interpretive type of guitarist. He's bought every Trower record that I can get. Wow. I've had 2 or 3 passes. He's probably bought 7 of them now, and he's hooked. He's like, now what? What's next? So it is such a thrill for me to try to match people's other purchases with other things. And almost everyone who requests things from me, I end up saying, "Hey, do you have any of this? Or what about this?" And I always try to, and generally speaking, I give extra free records to people. And then they'll go, "Hey, I need more of that. You sent me an ELO record. Send me some more. I want to buy some." And that's the idea. So it's a very fortunate role that I'm in. I tell people it's an adult candy store. And if you like candy,
nice.
You're going to find a lot of things you like. You may not be able to buy them all, but I will show you, if I know a little bit about what you like, I will show you a lot of candy. You don't have to eat it all or buy it all, but I'm going to show you. I have it. Like when you go to See's Candy. Ooh, I'd take it all if I could, but you can't. So yeah, it's a fun thing to watch people decide. Am I going to become a collector and just get these first pressings and these fancy records? Or am I going to be someone who finds the different small bands that are reasonably priced? They're great music that maybe got lost. So that's a fun thing for me. And that's certainly what I experienced. People don't know, back in Orange in the mid 70s into the early 80s, I think, the place was called the Record Trading Center in Orange. And my buddies and I were in high school, and the guy's name was Bob Heinlein, I believe. They were the first place to almost do rental music. So you could get new records, and then if you brought them back within 7 days, you got 60% store credit. He then resold those as demos and marked them down maybe 25%, 20%. We all had nice cassette decks and nice turntables. And I got to tell you, I probably got 500 double-sided cassettes because of what I learned from Bob at Record Trading Center. And, you know, I want to be Bob. I want to be, and he was from England. He was playing imports and things that we would never have a chance to hear. And we're just high school kids. He would let us stay after the place closed, put records away and hear music. I'm a Catholic school kid, right? He puts on F this and F that, F it all, and F and brat from the Sex Pistols. And this is a Catholic school kid. I'm like, what is that? Can you actually buy that? What is that? So that was a period where my head was exploding with all this classic rock, and then punk comes in and new wave and all this stuff. And I was a kid in a candy store,
Nice.
you know, and I couldn't have enough of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I do have an answer for you, Adriana, now, which is, I think for me, going back, it was definitely when we did The Last Unicorn. Are you a Last Unicorn fan by any chance, Bill? Or the soundtrack by America?
No.
It's this animated film from the early 80s that America did the soundtrack to. And I love the film, but I had always assumed it had a very small cult following. We played it at the Frida, had a massive audience. I think it was sold out. We did an encore of it. The author, the author of the book, Peter S. Beagle, to sign copies, and people came in droves. They came dressed as unicorns. It was a very rewarding experience because we got a lot of thank yous, a lot of people of all ages that were losing their minds over this film. And it was just another reminder that, you know, something that's very personal and important to me can be quite often very personal and important to other people. Which brings us to Mike. You took the question out. Well, actually, one more question I missed further back, and then I want to get to Mike's question, which is my question. But Marshall Berg asks, "Speak to Friday, Bill." I don't know if that's the movie Friday or something that's coming up on Friday, but Speak to Friday.
Well, Marshall is my Friday favorite. Marshall comes
to
the store on Fridays.
Nice.
And he and I are musical brethren. He goes and sees live bands a whole lot more than I currently do, but we often cross in terms of who we've seen and what we have. And I can't imagine having multiple customers like Marshall. I always joke with them. I'm like, you've seen your doctor, you've had your checkups, your health is fine. I mean, he's a part of my Friday. It's not right when Marshall doesn't come to see me on Friday. He's an extraordinary guy, and you know what? I'm a student of what I do. I learned every day. My mom passed away last year at 95, and she always had a saying that I used to make fun of her for, but now I appreciate. Bill, you should try to learn something new every day. And in my case, it's people telling me connections about music. And, you know, this band was actually a sprinter off of Grand Funk Railroad, and two of the members went here. And, you know, I'm constantly learning and studying and finding out more information. And, you know, it's fun. I'm not a know-it-all. And I think that's always what I've tried to not be. I think we've all been to those record stores where the guy is sort of, you know, I've been to a store where a guy's like, no, don't look at your phone. I don't want you checking our prices against anybody or any of that. Right. You know, the old school guy that thinks you're trying to, you know, save $1 or $2 on him or whatever. No, you know, if you're in my store and you pick up a record a couple times and you put it down, guess what? I'm going to be right there and I'm going to say, how about I take $5 off that for you because you seem to really want that record. And I don't want you not getting it because you think the price isn't quite right or you can't afford it. I want you to have that record. And that mentality, I think, really makes people comfortable and makes them think, I don't need those records. I got 10,000 records sitting around. I want you to have the records that you like in your collection. So that's great joy for me when, especially when people from out of town, I never thought I could find that record. I would never even ask to find that record at another store. I never find that in my neighborhood store. You know, he's from Oklahoma or whatever. And so that's always a great feeling when somebody finds something they never even would think could possibly be there. And there it is when they're flipping. And sometimes, yes, it's a soundtrack.
And I can say firsthand that what you describe is definitely the vibe that happens in your store, and that's what you bring to it every day. And from a personal level, having known Jeff from the very beginning back in Seal Beach, you carried that soul forward when you took the reins of that place. That not just where everybody knows your name, but really that investment to make sure that people leave with something that they're happy with and are introduced to things that they may not have been otherwise aware of in terms of music, genres, limited edition, and the breaks that you offer. We even had a couple sales at the theater where we partnered up and you did this amazing dollar sale, and that was incredible. So Mike has a very important question, and which I was going to close with. What can we do besides purchasing records and equipment to help support record stores and to help support you specifically, Left of the Dial Records, generally, and also with you? And where can we reach you? Where can folks reach you? How can they best reach you if they want to talk gear with you, if they want to see if there's a record available? Let us know.
Yeah, so email is probably the best on-the-go way with me. So the store is called Left of the Dial Records. Just move the records in front. So it says records left of the dial at gmail.com. And of course, the shop phone is 657-900-2275. I have a lot of people that talk to me on Instagram and Facebook as well. They use Facebook Messenger and what have you. That's all. But, at this point, I just continue to be available to people. And, most recently, my supplier can now drop ship direct to you. So if you want the soundtrack to The Last Unicorn and my guy has it, he doesn't even need to send it to my store. I can have it, you pay me, and I have it shipped directly to you. So you don't even need to get out and go curbside with me. I may not be able to compete with Amazon, but I can come pretty close. And so there's all kinds of opportunities there. So we'll be back soon enough, and we're doing fine. But yeah, just keep following me on Instagram and Facebook, and message me with your wish list. I'd love to go shopping for you.
And then you said, I just want to make sure, I'm going to pull this up on screen for everyone. It's 657-900-2275, correct?
That's right.
And then recordsleftofthedial.com, records plural.
Recordsleftofthedial at gmail.com is my is the email, which is the easiest way if you want to send me a list or ask me a question. I mean, my repair guy is very busy right now because I think during all this time at home, many people are cleaning, and what they're finding is old pieces of gear that they're like, I should have that looked on. Well, my guy is bombarded, so we're a few weeks out on repairs, but I'm also willing to give out some loaner equipment. If you need a turntable repaired, I could probably give you one you could use for a while. So, I want to keep you running and then get you back to where you were with your vintage gear as well. But, I can do things like that for you as well.
That is too awesome. That's awesome. Okay. So folks, thank you so much. And Bill, thank you so much. Obviously, if you haven't had a chance, folks, watch other music. It's pretty fantastic. Again, streaming off our website. Anything you want to close with, let people know while they have you. I mean, I'm sure a lot of folks that are listening and watching are excited to see you, haven't had a chance to come to the store, haven't had a chance to see your smile and know that you're, what you're up to and what you're doing. This is a great opportunity to say anything you want to your regulars, to folks who might be listening who love you and love your store.
Well, of course, this past weekend was supposed to have been Record Store Day. And to be honest, it was a list that was the most exciting one that I had seen since I'd taken over. And I think people were really bummed, and we're all just fingers crossed that now the rescheduled date of June 20th is still happening. But, the orders are all still in place, and it's all supposed to still happen again. So, I mean, it'll be back, and it'll be bigger and better than ever. I can promise. So it'll be so worth the wait.
And being someone who follows your Instagram, I can tell you folks, there will be updates on the Instagram from Bill as Record Store Day approaches. So follow them on Instagram. Keep connected. Bill, that was fun. Thank you so much.
Logan, you're a gentleman. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Everyone, thanks for watching. Have a very good night. And Bill, any way we can help, let us know. And looking forward to the day that your shop and my shop open our doors again and welcome all of our regulars, all of our Adrianas and Marshalls and familiar faces back to breathe life into our places again.
Thank you, my friend.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Be well.
Have a good night.